guys. How about a deal? The car tonight for Atari Basketball.
No.
In fact, there's no end to your possibilities with Atari home computers.
Atari 50th the anniversary celebration is as good as everyone says it is. The games received mentions in GameSite 2022 Best of lists, and the reason is simple. It sets a new benchmark for company-specific retro game compilations by not treating supplementary material as an extra, but rather the core of the experience. You're buying a video game to play the games, sure, but you're also buying a ticket to a virtual museum exhibit about Atari's history, as the company celebrates its 50th year. Atari 50th isn't just the same Asteroids and Centipede ROMs you've played before. While plenty of games previously released are here, and others missing, dozens of games in Atari systems have been added. You have arcade games new to this kind of Atari collection like iRobot, Cloak Dagger, and Quantum, and the compilation features 2600, 5200, 7800, Atari Home Computer, and even portable Lynx games. A particular standout is the debut of Jaguar emulation, and the inclusion of its arguably best game, Tempest 2000. Finally, there are the new games made for Atari 50th by Digital Eclipse, and they're all mostly excellent. You can critique some of Atari 50th's choices, both in what it includes, such as a ton of real sports titles, and for what it doesn't include, like Night Driver or Twist support for Asteroids, Lunar Lander, Gravatar, Asteroids Deluxe, or Space Tool. It's also true that the in-depth history, imagery, and video does get scarce as you get past the mid-1990s. The VCS does get a mention and a promo image in the timeline, however, and it's interesting to read more about the prototypes like the portable holographic game system that never got released. It's interesting to see the Atari landfill get photos and text, as well as occasional critiques about some of Atari's poorer choices over the years. I would have liked to see more information covering the year 2002 today, but it's probably easier to talk about this stuff after more time passes. The VCS is meant for a game like Atari 50th because of the classic controller, and having classic support is the best reason to buy it in Atari OS. For the most part, the classic works well, except in some frustrating cases like Asteroids, where you need to remap controls, due to some control being set to the modern's right trigger, for example, instead of an actual button on the classic. Using a modern controller works for everything, and the controls overall are either excellent or can be made excellent with control options. I would love further customization though, including better sensitivity. I'm happy to report the Classic and Twist do work well with Tempest 2000 and the arcade Tempest. In order to swap between the classic and modern controllers, I found I had to back out to the Atari OS home screen, then start the game with the controller I intended to use for Player 1. There is no online multiplayer or leaderboards for Atari 50th, but local co-op works well for any of the games that support it. Playing these games with a family member is a lot of fun, and sharing these games with your kids is great. Thankfully, the local co-op experience for me was largely stress-free, and everything worked great. The version of Atari 50th for the VCS has been made smaller in file size to better fit onto the console's default 32 gigs of storage. The VCS version is 4.5 gigabytes, quite a bit less than the 8.1 for Nintendo Switch, and 11.6 for PlayStation 5. The biggest difference is video and audio compression in the interview videos, with the VCS version having a bit of artifacting and overall lowered quality compared to the other versions. The videos look fine though and didn't really detract from the experience. However, if you want a nice-looking 4K version, look to the PC or PlayStation. Since you need twice the space of the file in order to install it, the decision to lower the video quality and file size for the VCS seems like a good one. Even so, it's the biggest game to date in Atari OS, and you'll need to make sure you have 9 gigs of space free in order to install it. It's worth noting that the VCS version of Atari 50th was released more than a month after the other versions, due to issues in getting the game ready to ship on Linux. I've only played the Switch version otherwise, but there seems to be few issues other than the above-mentioned control mapping bugs with the VCS version of the game. There are quite a few games in Atari 50th that we've not been able to play as ROMs commercially before. Not just the Jaguar titles, but games like Food Fight Arcade, Caverns of Mars for the Atari 800, and Bounty Bob Strikes Back for both the 800 and 5200. The added consoles and games is the other big reason to get this compilation. Additionally, Digital Eclipse created 7 reimagined games, and most of them are excellent. Haunted Houses adds color in a 3D space along with tweaks to the gameplay, while Neo Breakout takes the classic and gives it essentially its own recharge-style treatment. Quadratank supports up to 4-player combat with Capture the Flag and computer AI if desired, and Yar's Revenge lets you flip between the 2600 version and a tripped-out, colorful version with modern graphics. For me, the Vector Graphics arcade game mashup Vector Sector is the star of the show, and it's one of the best games in Atari 50th. You'll start with Asteroids, move to Lunar Lander, head to something like Battlezone, then fly into a modified version of Tempest, and repeat. The game is tough, and the game controls a bit like a twin-stick shooter with an additional shield button. I happen to have an actual Atari Jaguar console, but I only have a few games for it, and only one of them, Cybermorph, is on Atari 50th. I did pull the console out to check how Cybermorph plays on original hardware then Atari 50th, and I'm happy to report that the Jaguar emulation was good enough I couldn't notice much of a difference. The actual Jaguar games, though, maybe aren't so great. I hear Atari Karts has its fans, but I don't see it, and Fight for Life may be one of the worst Virtua Fighter-style polygonal fighting games I've ever played. Tempest 2000 is fantastic though, and reason enough to have this Jaguar emulation. Cybermorph isn't bad either actually, once you get the hang of it. It was just a poor choice for a pack-in game back in the day. Atari 50th is now Atari's premier compilation, and we've already seen the Atari Vault get delisted from Steam, meaning it's now considered a legacy release and no longer supported except on the VCS. That means AtGames' Atari Flashback Classics is now the only other commercial compilation for mass platforms, and it still has a place on your shelf, due to the incomplete nature of the curated collection in Atari 50th. There are a ton of games that were on Flashback Classics that didn't make it to 50th, and while there are a few 2600 games on 50th that aren't in Flashback Classics, including Solaris, Miner 2049er, and the 2600 Dark Chambers, Flashback Classics remains king when it comes to the most complete Atari IP 2600 catalog available commercially. Flashback Classics also supports leaderboards, online multiplayer, and the ability to play games vertically depending on the device. Quick note about Atari 50th on Nintendo Switch, since that console has a nice physical edition and is the best place for Flashback Classics as well, Atari 50th requires a pair of Joy-Cons for each player, unlike Flashback Classics where you can use one Joy-Con each, but both releases offer excellent touchscreen control. You have to wonder why Digital Eclipse didn't include more of the Atari 2600 catalog, since the games are small and the ROMs are widely available in other collections. But there are only two I felt were particularly missing, Bowling and Night Driver. The Atari VCS version gets an exclusive game with the 2600 version of Circus Atari. I also feel like they should have put in the 7800 version of Food Fight instead of the 800 version, to go along with the arcade. The 800 version features choppy movement and generally poor gameplay. There are 5 Atari 2600 games that need to be unlocked by completing goals in other games. Breakout is unlocked by completing level 6 of Neo Breakout. Combat 2 requires tracing a circle around the Atari logo with a rocket and quadratank. Gravitar is unlocked by destroying a Gravitar ship in Wave 3 of Vector Sector. Race 500 is unlocked by interacting with the entire timeline, and that does mean pressing the button, not just hovering over each element. Basic Math is unlocked by turning in a test in a classroom in the tutorial level of Haunted Houses.
How's business?
Booming.
Terrific.
How do you keep track of your customers?
My Atari 400 home computers.
Atari 50th is a rich collection of information, images, ads, video, and games, and it's clearly a prestige release that Atari will use as a foundation for the future. The reimagined games are reason enough to buy, but the added consoles and games is another, as is the overall excellent attention to detail with overlays, video filters, and screen sizing options. A version of this with a fuller IP catalog and online multiplayer and leaderboards would be the best next step, and here's hoping Atari is thinking about how people can play these games online with others in the future. While I'd like to see a bit better classic integration, and I found some of the control remapping to feel like it should really be a bug, the VCS version is the best way to play Atari 50th. Even people like myself who've been playing these games since before they were retro can find new things to learn, play, and see, and unless you've got a huge collection, it's unlikely you've played all the games in the systems before. I found new favorites, learned things I didn't know, and have a huge list of games to deeper dive into in the coming months. Thanks for watching. I'll have more videos in the coming weeks, including a look at Gunslugs. Liking and subscribing helps the channel a lot, so please consider it. There's more than a dozen games planned for release on the VCS in 2023, and I'll have videos about all of them on this channel. Have fun!